start this last half an hour of the day, and I'm very, very glad to introduce you Mariane Unanue from Brazil. So, ciao Mariane.
Ciao Davide, come stai?
Tutto bene. Mariane is a professor at the Faculty of Architecture at the University of Juiz de Fora in Brazil, and I'm very glad to speak with her today because we are sharing passion for the interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary topic that is the interaction between service design and spatial design. I will leave the floor to you, Mariane. Maybe you can introduce yourself and what are you doing exactly in your university, and then we will have the opportunity to have a talk about the topic.
Okay, Davide. So I'm really glad to be here with you today and tonight for you. And we also share the formation of being an architect. I know that you are also an architect. So from architect, I have been a former English student. You know, I say always that it's in a previous life. It's been a while. But I have a master in social memory and a PhD in architecture. So I was focusing on the education of architecture and in the conception process. And also I have 20 years of professional experience. So finding the service design was also a way of connecting the dots between architecture and my the education of architecture and my professional life.
You're actually teaching in at the university, and I got the opportunity to come and visit you a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic situation. And I have seen a great effort in establishing a kind of new path of education in your university, something that is crossing the boundaries of the architecture and expanding the discipline towards the service design. So where did this inspiration come from, and how this was accepted or explored by students and colleagues?
Well, I was really surprised to be accepted by some of my colleagues and many students from the bachelor course of architecture, and also with my first the first students that I supervised at the Master of Built Environment. So I was able to introduce the theme of service design, and now we have already 2 dissertations of the master that are already done, and we have another 2 that are going on at the moment, and also 2 books that we're trying to publish this year, I guess. I'm hoping. And so we have participated in many conferences in Brazil, Argentina, and in order to establish some dialogue with other designers and other architects about the relationships between architecture and service design. So I'm pretty happy to see that we are having some good results, and little by little we are joining more people and more docents and more other professors that are joining us in the theme.
Well, I'm happy too, because at the Politecnico di Milano in the design department, I'm coordinating the POLIMI Design Lab that is dealing with design for social innovation and sustainability. And since, let's say, 7-8 years, we are talking about this intersection between spatial design and service design, and by exploring it both from the theoretical point of view and from the practice point of view, and the educational one as well. So we have been experimenting not only with students, but even with local communities, some projects about merging these 2 sub-disciplines, let's say, under the shelter of design. Because as you were telling, I mean, even my background is architecture, I moved to interior design, then we started to call spatial design because we realized that we were not talking only about indoor, but we were mainly related to outdoor and public spaces. And then we started to explore the spatial design with the lenses of service design. Or even better, I mean, with the design thinking approach and the tools and methods that are behind that. So putting the people at the center of the project, not only as user-centered, but even involving them into the development of the project itself. So co-design activities and co-creation, co-building as well, co-prototyping together the solution, and so on. And when we started to do that, we were kind of pioneer, I have to say. And there was a big step into the Surf Desk conference that was done, if I remember well, in 2018, where we met and we started that conversation about this because we realized that there are few research centers around the world that were dealing with this issue. Why do you think it's kind of emerging discipline, this one, or transdiscipline, let's say?
Well, yeah, you're right. Since 2018, I'm investigating the relations and interconnections between service design and architecture. And it's been really challenging since in Brazilian Portuguese language, we didn't have many references. So most of our references were from previous surveys and other peer-reviewed journals, but most of them written in English. So we needed to surpass this initial difficulty in order to establish how we were going to make service design be understood by students in the bachelor and also students of the master, and how they could relate to their previous knowledge of architecture, and how we could find intersections between that. So I can say that for me, it was easier to make these bridges because of my previous professional background. Just like you, I have worked a lot with interior design, and so the instance of people have always been very important to me. And so it was kind of something that attracted me to service design, since the principles of being human-centered and the holistic principle also was something that showed me that we had more to explore that wasn't already being explored and being studied and being researched. So that's why I decided to start making these experiments even in my classes with the students at the design studio for the first semester of the bachelor in architecture, and also with the students the methodologies of teaching for architecture education. So nowadays it's kind of the primary line of my research.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that it's even it's dealing with the world, with the realm of architecture, that it's even different from the spatial design or interior design, where actually we don't have this kind of studies and connection in Politecnico between architecture and service design. So it's even more challenge. That's why I accepted this challenge to invite you here in Milan next academic year, starting from September, because I'm curious to see which are not only the boundaries, but even the overlapping of these different disciplines. The service design, interior design, spatial design, and architecture, and how and if there are any differences in dealing with the projects when talking about that. Maybe we are using lots of coding words, but let's say that when we are telling that service design and interior design or spatial design or architecture are merging, I think that we are talking about something that is very tangible and let's say the hardware part of the story, that are the spaces in which lots of activities and functions are happening. And when these activities are intangible or are dealing with interaction among people or interaction among people and spaces, well, let's say that there's more room for service design to be emerged. And so I don't know, I mean, if you agree with that, but what I noticed throughout the years is that it's very, how can I say, immediate and simple to talk with students and developing projects that are including this intangible part of the project within the spaces and understanding these things that I was mentioning before, while at the same time there's a huge lack of theories behind that. Theories that are talking about these overlapping of the two disciplines, because for sure, I mean, service design, it's something that is super codified and super explored, and at the same time, interior and architecture are the same. But when we're talking about these two things together, there's some lacks. What do you think about?
Yeah, I guess there are many things that we could find, like that can approximate and bring together service design and architecture. And also, I think that there is something that we can bring a double benefit for both disciplines, I should say, since what really called my attention when I first started studying service design is that service design is in service design designs and projects. The space is most of the time a vessel. It's kind of a container of a service. So the process of service design was paying attention to people, was paying attention to all the steps and all the functions and the things that occur during a service. But in my opinion, space was still being disregarded and or not being looked as much as it could be and explored in a way it could bring also many tangibilities to the service that were being designed, since the space can offer a multitude of sensorial experiences and the touch points that we have at a space. So I think it may be, or it should be more explored. But I can't say what goes on in Italy, but our reality here in Brazil and in Juiz de Fora, we struggle with developing qualitative research. So maybe it's something that all of us need to create or realize a way of making these kind of issues that are very intangible, how to make them tangible, how to make them more quantitative in a way that we could measure it and show the advantages of using this methodology and this joint methodology of the two disciplines.
Well, it's very interesting because the topic of this 24 hours worldwide design conversation this year is designing in an age of uncertainty. And I think that we are facing really new challenges. So that when we were asked to find out some people to talk with, I thought about you, because I think that exploring research fields and understanding design practices that are two of the subtopics of this conversation were really fitting into this idea of guiding the design research from one side and the design education from another side towards new frontiers, so towards new boundaries, by breaking maybe some barriers between different languages, different methods, and different tools. Well, then, when it happened, this pandemic situation, I have to say that we were asked to solve some very quick evident problems that were happening in the world, and they were mainly connected to spaces. If you think about the first lockdown, for instance, last year, February, March, April till June, I mean, one of the big issues was to find out a way to be safe outdoor while queuing, going to supermarket. That was that is a very clear and crystal clear memory I had when the first time I came out from my house after a couple of months. And then I realized that, okay, this is really something that is related to a space that we have to design, but at the same time to some services that we can offer to people while they are queuing, or some services that we can offer to people to avoid to queue. And so it happened that from one side, for instance, in Milan, there was some initiatives by the municipality to provide new spaces or enlarging the sidewalks or closing some streets and give back to people more space to walk. And from the other side, there was emerging this new app on the telephone that allow you to understand how many people were queuing, how long did it take to go into the supermarket and so on. And I realized that, yes, I mean, it's not something really related to theory that we have to explore. Sometimes it's really something that it's there, it's in front of us, and we have to face it. I don't know if you had the same experience or if you have any example that maybe happened in your country in the last year about that.
Well, as you know, we are still at a very difficult moment on COVID, because we already have many people that are being dead, are dead every day. So it's a big issue still now. But I'm happy to notice that from last year to now, many places, many stores, many supermarkets and pharmacy and gyms, they were able to acknowledge the importance of planning, of designing spaces, or even though they didn't make many investments in terms of money, they were able to adapt some of the places that they had and the spaces they had. But also I think that it's a good way, there is a good thing on that, because people started to realize the importance of the spaces that we live. So how they need to pay attention to that, and in order, how much that these kind of spaces that there are livable spaces, they also need to be safe, they need to be healthy, they need to provide us with good quality of life. So in some way, I think that architects and designers are going to benefit from all of this situation that we are living in, although it's still very hard for all of us. At the beginning, I may confess that I was very worried about going to the supermarket, because, as you know, Brazilians like to be very close to each other. So it was a big issue to stand on the line, to be waiting to be attended somewhere. And this was something that was really overwhelming for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's really related even to the proxemic, I mean, to the relation between people, culture, and the use of the space. So it's very interesting, and especially in those countries in which hugging and being very close one to each other, it's part of the culture. Yeah, and you know what happened here in Milan was that even this wave of tactical urbanism that raised in the last years, one of the answer of the municipality was really to try to give back public spaces to people. And if at the very beginning it sounded like a kind of bizarre solution for public spaces with those super colorful new squares and so on. At the end of the day, it is something that saves most of the citizens, even at the neighborhood level, because they could go out and go to some open air places in safety, and with even the addition of services. For instance, since most of these tactical urbanism solution in Milan, there are sports facilities like table volley or tables where to play cards, and even if they are very very simple solution, but they really increase the way in which people are benefiting for the public spaces themselves, and creating even new kind of socialities, social places among the people themselves. I don't know what is happening in Brazil about the use of public space, and if you think that there are any changes that are coming, or it's still the same like before.
Well, what we experience here in Juiz de Fora is that many squares were shut down. Okay. So we have very few public spaces like squares, and I really don't like this name in English, because most of our squares are not a rectangle or a square. Our design, our urban design generally works with residual spaces that then they call a square. So we have around 200 places in Juiz de Fora that are called officially squares, but less than a half of them are usable spaces where people can live and can interact and can have social connection and can use for gym exercises and can use for this social connection in general. So we already have few places like that. And in this pandemic, when the numbers would be high, these kind of places would be shut down. At the university, for instance, our campus is, I always say that it's the most used square or public space in Juiz de Fora, because people that don't study there, don't work there, people of all over the city go there to be amidst the nature, to exercise, to be with children, where children can play, children can work their bikes, they take their pets, their dogs and their pets. So it's like big public space that we have here in Juiz de Fora. And what happened is that because of these high numbers, we didn't have how to access the university by car, which is the main transportation that transportation that people use to get there. So there is no parking places. They shut down all the parking places, so people would go walking or by public transportation. So I felt a lot the absence of this public space in Juiz de Fora, and I guess many people also felt that, because we already have so few, and one of the most important ones needed to be shut down because people weren't paying attention to social distancing and to all of the paying attention to what we should have, like using masks and keeping distance. So it was a huge struggle how to change some of the way people use these spaces. So
yeah,
not the best solution, but
yeah. No, you're right. I think that there were two main topics to me related to this approach of service design, spatial design, or architecture, in that we had to face during and after the, let's say, during the pandemic situation. One was about the public space. The other one was the surviving of the small shops at neighborhood level, because they were the ones that were suffering the most because of the lack of people around, because it was easier to book online through the main delivery channels. And so nowadays, one of the challenges that we have to face is to try to understand how to give new prosperity. I mean, give new life to this kind of shops, not only from the point of view of the spaces themselves that are for sure changed, because if I think about bars and restaurants, I don't know what situation in Brazil, but here in Milan, I mean, they were affected for most of the time of not allowing people to go inside. And so they have to equip and to put furniture outside their spaces. And that was a kind of design, the threshold in between the indoor and the outdoor, and the design of the new public space itself. And so, and this from the point of view of the space. But then even some additional services are emerging. For instance, delivery at very short array, so very local delivery system, because the neighborhood dimension is the one that is most suitable for that, or any other thing that could boost a bit the economic suffering that they had. So to conclude, we have 3 more minutes. I would love to ask you if you have to think something about the future that you would love to develop within this discipline. What are the scenarios that you think that is more promising to explore?
Well, I'm really eager to start working with citizens. So since the pandemic has begun, we had outreach project to be able to work with people designing spaces, and also engaging the students from the university, from the bachelor and the master course. So we already had everything set, and then the pandemic hit, and we couldn't begin to work on that. So I'm really eager to see what can we do with citizens, because it's a different approach from when you only consider the user in a participatory design, for instance. Like Richard Sennett always points out that in general, participation design in architecture is like consultation. But when we have the co-production and the co-design that service design promotes, I think it's much richer experience, and we can make so much out of that. So I'm really eager to be able to do that.
Good. I'm eager to have you here in Milan starting from September. Finger crossed for the visa and for the pandemic limitations. And thank you very much, Mariane, to being here for this 30 minutes conversation. That was lovely.
It's my pleasure.